Sol continues his quest for power to defeat Marcus. Nathan receives his gifts and blood from a surprise source, and the conflict with Saul comes to a surprising conclusion. Hello, entertainment enthusiasts. This is Ray, and this is the Fandom Realm. And today I'm reviewing episodes 6, 7, and 8 of Half Bad, the Bastard Son, and the Devil himself. As always, just remember, this is a spoiler review, so be warned. Now, before I get started, I do just want to say that this is probably going to be a little bit shorter on the review part because I am putting 3 episodes together and getting them all out at one time. And of course, I actually decided to do this because the other videos really didn't have all that many views. But I have enjoyed the show, and I wanted to finish it up with reviewing the last 3 episodes. And I think they're the best 3 episodes as well. So, following the barn massacre, we're going to see that Nathan, Gabriel, Odette, and Annalise, along with Celia as their prisoner, are making their way down the river in a riverboat. All of them have been deeply touched by what just went on, basically this massacre at the barn. But their most pressing problem at the moment is that Odette is basically at her giving day. And if her brother, who survived the massacre, doesn't take the blood and get his gifts, they're both going to die. And it's probably not going to be a very nice death. Question is, are the Fairborns going to let him carry out their ritual? Annalise seems to think they will. Nathan doesn't think so. But really, Annalise might have something of a point. Just like Celia, Bjorn is becoming visibly upset at Sol's nonsense, and especially of his fondness for Jessica and how evil Jessica seemingly is. He also doesn't really buy into the idea that the reason they're there is to kill Marcus Edge. It seems like that's a little bit too much. And it also seems like killing Marcus Edge isn't really what Sol is up to. Now, they're going to end up coming into this basically fair area. There's some type of outdoor fair going on, and Sol is going to order Bjorn to use his power, which is basically freezing people in place. It might have something to do with controlling time, but it's one of those. And while they're here at this fair, Sol is actually going to start brewing some potions. Now, meanwhile, there's also going to be some of the Parisian Bloods led by Nikki and Hugo, who made their way into the woods, and they're all looking for Nathan. And of course, at some point, we know everybody's going to find one another. While Bjorn tries to get Max his grandfather's blood, Sol basically cuts off his own pinky, puts it in a mixing bowl with Nathan's, and grinds them both up. Kieran, who is not feeling good about this whole massacre situation, reunites Max with his grandfather for the ceremony. But it's clearly Jessica impersonating him, which means he didn't get the blood, and his private talks are giving information about Mercury to the Fairborns. This is pretty much confirmed on the riverboat, where Odette becomes extremely ill even after her twin supposedly drank the blood. Max starts acting the same way, and Jessica's going to sadistically watch as he's going to be in lots of pain. Bjorn discovers this all too late when he stumbles on Max's grandfather. His corpse was in the woods, and both Max and Odette are going to die an excruciating death. We are going to get to see that their power would have likely been fire because their flames ignited in their palms and then they died away as they died. Nathan goes ballistic at this development and attacks Celia, which is a nice callback to their training sequences. When she starts getting the better of the fight, he tries to shoot her instead. But Annalise ends up decimating the gun. Nathan decides they'll drop Celia off at the next Bloods colony, and whatever they do to her is their business. But he does want there to be consequences for what the Fairborns are doing. They're going to bury Odette in the woods, and they're going to move on. Now, as they're getting ready to move on, when we look at this idea of being able to affect people in different places, Sol is going to ingest his poison concoction, and it's going to send both him and Nathan into a seizure. During the seizure, Nathan is able to see memories of Wolfhagen and the massacre that happened there. we see that Sol was hiding alongside Celia, and he's also going to see basically that Sol and Elfie was assigned by Rutger to kill Nathan's mother and make it look like a suicide. We even see the act itself. By Nathan's side, Celia implores Annalise to use decimation to pull the poison out of Nathan's body, and she's going to concentrate and she's going to be successful, especially with the encouragement of Celia and Gabrielle. Only problem is, it pulls the poison out of Sol as well. While Nathan deals with what he saw, Sol gets excited about his sudden ability to hear heartbeats. He's pretty full of himself by this point, and he is actually going to end up killing Bjorn when Bjorn tries to relieve him of his command, and he's going to take Bjorn's power. He's going to cut out his heart, he's going to eat it, and this is going to, of course, make Jessica very happy. As the episode comes to a conclusion, and this was episode 6, as the episode comes to conclusion, Annalise and Gabriel are drinking, they're dancing, and Nathan is just watching what they're doing. And we get to see there might be some type of love triangle happening here. Now, moving into episode number 7, of course, we're getting closer to the end. This is the penultimate episode. We're getting ready for the showdown, and we're going to start out at Wolfhagen. Elfie informs Sol at the beginning of this episode that they have lots of people, they have plenty of supplies, and considering that Sol now has all of these powers, he's not really afraid of Marcus anymore. And he proposes that they lure Marcus into a trap. Jessica, however, doesn't think Sol is powerful enough, and she actually is going to want him to take Annalise's power because she thinks the power of decimation is the only thing that can stop Marcus. Jessica's going to send Kieran out to track down Annalise, who has just started out with Celia. They left Nathan to bond even more with Gabrielle, who takes him to a hideout with a hidden map that links all the locations in the world with these cuts that they've been using to travel in. Kieran manages to track them down, and Nathan, getting the wrong end of the stick, clubs him over the head with a giant set of bolt cutters. The only problem is, Kieran was actually trying to help, not hurt Gabrielle when Nathan attacked. So Kieran's going to end up dying, but as he dies, he basically warns that Jessica wants to hurt Annalise, and then he dies. This is going to leave Nathan very upset and distraught, and he's going to be sick everywhere. Kieran was also, before he died, trying to warn them not to go to Wolf, and that's all he got out. And of course, he was trying to warn Annalise as well. Nathan's going to use the map to figure out how to use a cut to get to Wolfhagen. At around the same time, we see Jessica shapeshift into Sol and tell Annalise on the phone to meet him at Wolfhagen. We also get our Blood Witch hunters back, Hugo and Nikki, and they are on the trail. They actually are able to reanimate Bjorn for just a few seconds and tell them where they need to go next. So they're headed to Wolfhagen too. Nathan and Gabriel are going to debate their next destination. It's only a day until Nathan's giving day, and without his blood, his family's blood, he's going to die. But Nathan thinks they have time to go to Wolfhagen and save Annalise before they go to see Mercury. Gabriel doesn't agree with this, and so they're sort of at a standstill. Nathan's finally going to decide that he'll go with Gabriel to see Mercury, but after they finally share a kiss, Nathan pushes Gabriel through the cut, and then he finds the one and heads off to Wolfhagen alone. And of course, Gabriel now is going to be going to Mercury's. On their way to meet Sol, Annalise and Celia are ambushed by some of the Blood Witches, giving Celia a reason to use her powers, and she has the power to freeze things. We've already seen that before, but this is going to leave Annalise alone, headed to Wolfhagen. Now we're going to move on and see Gabriel trying to sneak into Mercury's house, which I thought it was very interesting that she has her doors locked by riddles and sayings, and he's there, of course, to steal Nathan's family blood and take it and find Nathan so he won't die. Mercury is going to catch him in the act, and she warns him about the fires brewing at Wolfhagen. And there are some cutscenes in here, and we know some bad things are going on. Of course, as Sol arrives, they're going to realize all the Fairborns that they'd been told was there, well, they weren't there. And that's because they had been slaughtered by Marcus. Earlier, when Aofi made the call to Saul and was telling him, they had everything they needed at Wolfhagen, it turns out that was all Marcus forcing her to do it. Now, as episode 7 starts to come to an end, Mercury is going to, I hate to use the word manipulate, but she's going to make Gabrielle stay with her using that memory loss powder that we've actually seen Gabriel use. Nathan and Annalise, they're actually going to arrive at Wolfhagen. Nathan's going to be grabbed by our blood witches, Hugo and Nikki. Annalise is going to get inside, which confuses Sol. He doesn't understand why she's there. And, of course, we all know that Jessica was responsible for Annalise coming to Wolfhagen. And then we're going to hear a wolf howl in the distance. And that brings to a close episode number 7. Now, moving on to episode 8, the finale, we're going to get to see a flashback of Gabriel's childhood. We learn that he was actually given up to Mercury by his parents, and that it wasn't something he wanted to do, but Mercury saw him as being a very potentially talented witch. And of course, Mercury over the years has used that yellow powder on him as well. One of the interesting things here is we're going to get introduced to Mercury's assistant. He's a young guy from back then. I thought it would have been very interesting. He was probably late teenage years. I thought it would have been very interesting if that guy was one of the people that we were seeing in the rest of the show. But what happens is that guy, her assistant, gives Gabriel the book that they had issues over earlier. And what we find out is he basically tells Gabriel to write down the names of important people, and it'll help him remember. The first 2 names we learn are his parents, and we also know that the last name in the book is Nathan's. Now, moving back to Wolfhagen, Nathan's going to try to talk some sense into the Parisian Bloods by reminding them that Marcus wants revenge, and if they are truly interested in helping him, they should stop worrying about the prophecy and just go inside and kill the Fairborn hunters. Inside Wolfhagen, Jessica is trying to persuade Sol to take Annalise's decimation power, and she just about succeeds when the Bloods launch their attack. It is a nice time for a distraction, so we can have some things happening. But we're also going to skip back to Mercury's. Gabriel is going to be looking in the book. He's going to remember what was going on. We are reintroduced to the young blonde kid who presumably is the new version of Gabriel for Mercury. And the young boy is going to help Gabriel steal Nathan's family's blood. And he's going to tell him there's a secret passage, a cut that was created by the boy before him, but that boy never got to use it. The little boy is too afraid to use it, and Gabriel actually promises that he will return one day and save him. And he writes his name on the inside of his shirt cuff. Mercury tries to stop Gabriel from leaving. It's sort of like a villain in a horror novel or something. She really uses her magic. She really looks like an evil witch at that point. But he's going to escape through the cut under the boy's bed. Now, another thing they're going to do, and I wasn't all that big on this after the 3rd or 4th time they did it, but they kept doing in the series these scenes where they would mix what was happening now with what happened at the Peace Massacre. And I wasn't a big fan of that, especially after they did it once or twice. They tried it again in this episode, and while, it's fine, I just thought it was a little bit old. Now, Celia is going to arrive, and she's going to basically prevent Nathan from confronting Sol by himself and tells him to go find Annalise, and she's going to carry out the fight. As we flash to the cellar, or the wine cellar, Annalise is there with Jessica. Jessica has her cornered and is being all, bad guy monologue person at the time. And Jessica is going to underestimate Annalise's ability to control decimation. And Annalise is actually going to catch Jessica in her curse, if that's what you want to call it, in her power. And she partially sort of decimates Jessica, but just something maybe inside of her. She doesn't blow her into pieces, which would have been nice, but she breaks something in Jessica. And actually, we'll find out later, she can't turn into other people now. Now, Gabriel's going to arrive, but Nathan isn't going to drink his blood because Gabriel actually gets shot. The only thing saving Gabriel was the fact that the bullet basically hit the vial of Nathan's family's blood. And now, apparently, Nathan has no way to survive. Now, we all, of course, know. We've already heard the wolf. We already know Nathan's dad's around there. So we all know what's going to happen. And that's that Marcus is going to give Nathan the blood and the gifts. But before we get to that, Sol is going to kill Celia. He basically was feeding on her neck, sort of like a vampire. And she's going to have to sit there and watch as he kills and eats the hearts of the Parisian blood vampires, the Parisian Bloods. She's going to finally die with Nathan, Gabriel, and Annalise nearby. Nathan, Gabriel, and Annalise are going to leave Wolfhagen together. Nathan is on the brink of death, and they're going to walk through the forest. They're going to do this whole spiel about liking each other and getting things off their chest just in case Nathan dies. They're going to walk further into the woods, but Sol uses the power that he got from Bjorn to freeze Gabriel and Annalise in place, and he wants to confront Nathan directly. Nathan knows he can't compete in a direct fight and runs off into the mist, but he's getting weaker and weaker every minute. As he runs off into the mist, he is going to run into Marcus. Marcus is going to tell him about killing his mother's husband, and that's when he sort of learned about his power to eat hearts and take other witches' powers. But with that, of course, we're going to skip through a lot of this father-son stuff to start with and talking about family. He is going to explain that he did think that the best way to help Nathan when he was younger was for him to flee, and that would keep Nathan safe from the Fairborn Council if Marcus stayed out of the picture. We get to find out Marcus can see the future, and he has seen his own death. Nathan is going to hold a knife to Marcus's throat, but he is not worried because he knows that is not how he is going to die. He will eventually give Nathan his blood and his 3 gifts. The first gift is Nathan's life. The second is the last words his mother said to Marcus about how she was unafraid of what their son might become. And his final gift is the chance for Nathan to see who he really is. He's got to go avenge his mother and grandmother by killing Sol. Marcus basically left his knife in the tree log. Nathan's going to take it, and he's going to set out through the woods, tracking Sol by his heartbeat. The two are going to square off. Basically, Sol's getting the better of Nathan. Nathan does manage to avoid lightning bolts, fireballs, ice, and he basically does bury that knife in Sol's chest. But it doesn't really do any damage. What it does do, though, is it frees Gabrielle and Annalise from their suspension. They're going to rush to intervene, and Annalise is going to tearfully use decimation on her father, and she kills him. As he's dying, or getting ready to die, he's going to repeat the prophecy. His own blood will kill the wolf, as he realizes that his daughter has just fulfilled the prophecy. As the season ends, Jessica steps through a cut and into Mercury's presence, and basically Mercury tells her she doesn't think she can fix her power, but hopefully she can help Jessica get revenge on Nathan. This is going to cut back to Nathan, Gabriel, and Annalise being together, and Nathan is going to stare across at Sol's decimated body, and there's his heart laying on the ground beating. So we're left with the question, what does Nathan do? Now that we've finished the recap, I do want to offer some thoughts and some reactions on basically these last 3 episodes, but it's going to be more of the whole series combined. So the first thing I want to talk about, and again, this is going to reach further than just episode 6, 7, and 8, is how this show approached the good versus bad. Okay. I really thought it was intriguing that they chose to show the good Fairborns versus the evil Bloods. They chose to basically do a heel turn on them, basically, okay? And everything we saw from early on from the Fairborns was that they were the good guys. They had to be against the evil Bloods who were led by Marcus, this guy who ravaged a peace conference and killed everybody there, and he eats people's hearts, and that just means he's got to be bad, and we've got to beat him, and we're going to use his young son to do that, and that young son is going to be basically tortured and bullied, and then actually when he gets old enough to teach him how to fight and maybe actually beat Marcus because of this prophecy, you actually keep him in a cage all the time and out in the weather, and he's wet and he gets abused even more, and you think the Bloods were the bad guys. So I thought it was very interesting how they did that, but I also thought it led into this whole idea of the prophecy. When we were first introduced to that prophecy, his own blood will kill the wolf. Of course, everybody thought that was going to be Nathan killing Marcus. But once we started getting it through the first couple episodes, I'm sure I'm not the only one who started thinking, Soul is turning a little evil here. And then once we saw Annalise get her powers and use decimation, I started putting together that idea that maybe this actually means Soul is turning evil and he's going to be the big bad wolf, and Annalise is going to be the blood that kills the wolf. And of course, in the end, we know that's exactly what happened, and Annalise is going to decimate Soul. So I thought they linked all that together. I thought it was a pretty well told story, although it was something I think most people could put together early in the series. And it was just one of those things, you could tell very early on that it probably wasn't going to be Nathan and Marcus. Of course, we also knew, moving on to another subject, everybody knew Marcus was going to show up and he was going to be the one that would give Nathan his gifts and his blood. I did think the gifts were a little bit iffy. 2 of them, I guess, were pretty good, but things like having the chance to avenge your grandmother or mother, those were a little bit weird, to be honest. But especially when he had a knife there and he could have just said, I give you this knife as a gift, and you take this knife and kill people, and I think with the whole Marcus and Nathan relationship, they only got to meet each other for a couple of minutes. With that whole relationship, you sort of knew throughout that Marcus was probably not as big a bad as the Fairborns were telling everyone, but it looks like he's a very sensible person who was fighting for the Bloods. I do wish we would have gotten to see more of Marcus. I do wish we would have gotten to see some of him using his powers directly. I wish we would have just seen him more. He only appeared in episode 8. I think it was a mistake for them not to have shown him as a person, as a witch, earlier in the series. In an earlier episode, I mentioned that when I first started this series, I actually had planned on doing episode by episode. And then after I watched a few episodes, I had negative thoughts about it. And I got through episode 6 and was like, I'm just going to change it up. I'm going to shorten the number of episodes. Once I made that decision, then I actually watched the last 2 episodes, which I thought were extremely good. So, we were left with the decision that I was going to do double episodes for a while and then end up doing the finale by itself. And part of that just was the first time watching through this, I didn't know how much people would like this show. It had a lot of blood. It had some violence. It had maybe a small horror element to it. Not big, but maybe a little here and there. But again, lots of blood, had lots of magic. I love magic, so that's what drew me to the series. But with that, I didn't really know how many people would like it. And then as I've gone back and rewatched, I've really sort of noticed after that second episode when Gabriel was introduced to the show, I think is when the show picked up. The first 2 episodes, a little slow. It was basically history. It was world building. They did good world building. I was turned off by keeping your star in a cage. Do have some issues, just to be honest, that I'm going to talk about at the end here. But with that, I thought Gabriel's character infused energy. There was no humor before. He sort of became the humor. He became someone for Nathan to sort of act off of, to be his BFF. Now, of course, Gabriel wanted more than BFF, but basically with that, they interacted extremely well in the last 6 episodes. You had a situation where you could see there are feelings developing between them, and then you had Elise sort of in that group of 3. I'm not real sure I ever totally bought into her acting. Okay. I love the fact she had that awesome power, but she seemed a little overpowered for me, and her personality just didn't sort of fit what she was becoming. And I'm not sure if that was the acting or what. But back to Gabriel. Gabriel gave some charisma as well, some energy that I think the series was missing. And then you also started to pick up the action. You started to see really get into the history of Marcus, Soul turning evil, the Fairborns versus the Bloods, and the Fairborns starting to become evil. You get to see Gabriel use some magic. You see Mercury introduced, and we get into Gabriel's past and what that might mean for the future. And so with that, I really think that addition of Gabriel was extremely positive. As I have said before, it did bring a gay storyline to the series, which was fine. I mean, I think they pulled it off pretty well. I think they could have gone a little bit further, but they pulled it off pretty well. I just have a problem in that people were calling this an LGBTQ series when it most definitely was not. It was a series that had LGBTQ characters, and I think there's a distinction between that. And so with that, the storyline I thought went really well. When they went on top of that tower and were supposed to be going to Mercury's, I wasn't expecting the kiss, but I was definitely expecting Nathan to push Gabriel off that tower into the cut. And so with that, of course, that's what happened. Now, I really only have 1, maybe 2 sort of issues with the series and the writers. And I'm not sure if this is because this is a British series or what, but I'm going to tell you, I don't think in the U.S., in the time we're living in right now, I don't think you could write this story with a black star who is basically being beaten and kept in a cage, and then have really your other main black character being called the devil himself, okay, or anything like that. Now, I don't have a problem with the show. I'm just saying that I'm very surprised this is how the show went. Now, this is where I'm going to pull in the book. Because I stretched all this out over time, I have been able to read the Half-Bad books. And I'm going to tell you, they are very different in some of the things that happens. One of the big differences is, and this is why I bring up the whole idea of black versus white in this, which I hate to do. But actually, in the book, the Fairborns are called the whites and the Bloods are called the blacks. Again, this is something that probably would not go over great in the U.S., but maybe because this is more of a British production, and I'm not sure if Sally Green, the author of Half-Bad, is British. I'm not going to look that up. I don't really care. But it seems to me that's a very dangerous game that she's playing there. And in this time of sensitivity, I'm very surprised other people have not brought this up. about not only the book, but this series now. Oh, and by the way, I absolutely recommend the books. I've really enjoyed them. They're told from Nathan's perspective, first person, and I think they do a really good job of it. The first book is a little, you sort of have to hold your breath a little bit because it's just like go, 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 go. But I really enjoyed the books. It gave some perspective to the show, and I think that's probably a good thing. Now, I know you all probably listened to me rant on more than you want, so with that, I do want to give the series a grade. I'm going to end up giving it a B-. Again, I enjoyed it for the most part. B- is not a bad grade for me, and so with that, I thought the first 2 episodes were fairly weak just into world building. I thought as we moved into the 3rd and 4th episode, the addition of Gabriel really helped, or they were above average. And then your final 2 episodes I thought were extremely good. And so with that, I'm going to come out probably a B- on Half Bad, The Bastard Son, and the Devil himself. With that being said, I hope everyone has enjoyed the reaction and the review to Half Bad. Please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and comment below. And I'll see you next time on the Fandom Realm.